Hi everyone. Today I'm going to show you some best practices for maximizing outcomes with SupportLogic. Our goal is to be efficient as possible in the use of the platform. So we're just going to cover some key things that will allow you to take advantage of the best features and be the most efficient that you can be, while spending as little time in the platform as you need to, because we know that you have lots of other things that you're doing all day long and lots of other tools that you're working out of. Okay, so what are we going to cover? We're going to cover 6 items today. The first is how you configure filters so that you only see cases relevant to you in the UI. Second, I'm going to show you how to review cases on the console that contain needs attention and negative signals. These are sentiment signals that SupportLogic NLP detects on your cases. Next, we're going to review cases on the escalation board that are predicted as likely to escalate. That way, you can be proactive on these cases and get ahead of them before they cause trouble and get out of hand. 4, we're going to configure alerts so that you can stay up to date throughout the day, even when you're not in the platform. 5, we're going to show you how to review backlog lists in SupportLogic to ensure that important cases are progressing appropriately. And 6, going to show you how to review the My Agents views to quickly spot cases owned by team members that may be going stale and need follow-up. Typical time commitment for this is approximately 1 hour per day, but it's possible to be more efficient than that and quicker as you get used to using the platform. Okay, so now we're going to switch over and we're going to start here on the console page. So the very first thing that you need to do is make sure that you have a filter configured so you're only seeing the cases that are relevant to you. What this means is that you're going to configure a filter to see cases that are perhaps only owned by your team. Or perhaps you're responsible for enterprise support, and so you only see cases for customers that are paying for enterprise support. Or maybe your focus is on high severity cases or critical severity cases. You can configure filters for any of these so that you're only focused on the cases that are relevant to you. This is important because if you don't configure filters, the UI can be very, very noisy, and you'll be seeing way more than you need to, and it can quickly get overwhelming, and then you won't use it. So you'll notice in the top right here, the option to select filter. From here, you'll see the option to manage your global filters. I've already created 3 filters, but let me show you how those look when you go through the creation process. You'll notice here, looking in detail, that I have the option to create a new filter, as well as I can view the other filters that I've created. As an example, this particular one, set to enterprise support, has 2 conditions tied to it. Cases where the support level is set to enterprise or partner support, and cases where the account support level is set to premium. Now, these are just examples, and the names of these fields and the values in these fields could look completely differently within your environment, depending on how your own CRM is configured. You'll see another one here. This one is set to just show agents that are part of a team that I've configured in SupportLogic. As a support manager, you might be responsible for a team of 6 or 7 agents, and you can absolutely configure teams in SupportLogic so that you only see cases that are owned by those team members. In addition, I have another filter here for critical and high severity cases. You'll notice that the condition for this filter is simply that this case severity is set to critical or high on the case. This is based on a custom field for severity. These filters can work in conjunction with one another, so I can apply each of them individually, or if I apply 2 of them, the conditions for both will be in effect. Briefly, I'll show you that if you click to create a new filter, you can see that the filter can leverage any and all custom fields that are available to you from your CRM, any account level fields that have been ingested into SupportLogic, You can leverage some of the SupportLogic scores, these being the account health score, the needs attention score, and the sentiment score. You can also create filters based on specific customers. You would simply type in the name of a customer, and then you can select that, and then you would only see, then you could add a filter specifically just for so that you see cases associated with that customer. As I mentioned earlier, you can also create a filter for the agents that report to you. You can add as many agents as you wish, or you can also create a custom team in our virtual teams section. That way, you're only selecting the team itself rather than the individual agents, the way I did. Okay. So now that we know how to do that, I'm going to go ahead and select one of the filters that I created, Enterprise Support. And we'll see now I'm only seeing 40 cases here in the console page. Now, these are all cases that have had recent activity today. And what I want to do is I want to take a look at any cases that have had sentiment signals, negative sentiments detected upon them, and needs attention signals detected upon them, and determine if there's an action that I need to take as the manager or that I need my team to take. Really, the purpose here is to prioritize cases that are particularly relevant or important to ensure that they don't get out of hand, to ensure that we're being proactive rather than reactive. So you'll see here I have a list of a number of cases here with frustration signals. If I look into one of them, we'll see here's one. It says in progress. A frustration signal was detected just 6 hours ago. So I'm going to open up the case. I'm going to take a quick look, see some of the things that are being said by the customer, and determine, okay, is there an action that I need to take or that I need to have my team take on this case to ensure it's driven towards a better outcome? We can see that it has a relatively low sentiment score at 49. Then the needs attention score is neutral. However, that low sentiment score indicates that the customer is not doing well. So at this point, I would likely want to take some action on this case. So what I can do is I can click the link to directly open the case within my CRM. For the demo environment, it's a Salesforce, but in your environment, it could be ServiceNow, it could be MS Dynamics, whatever you're actually using. The key here is that you've decided to take an action on this case, and that action can involve going to your CRM and then adding an internal note to the case. However, if you have the integration set up here, you can add an internal note directly from within SupportLogic, which would immediately persist back in your CRM. And you could give guidance to the agent or engineer who's working the case, or you could also loop in additional SMEs. So you can do that here just by adding an internal note. You can also choose to share the case directly to a user, such as the engineer, or to an SME, or anyone else you want to get involved in the case. I use Slack, so I can share this case with myself on Slack, and it will and I can send it with a note. And then from Slack, I'll receive a message, and I can click the link in that message to take me to the case directly within my CRM. Once there, I can take an action on the case. Okay. So going back to the console page here, I've made a decision to take an action on that particular case. The one thing that I should do on it before moving on is acknowledge the sentiment, which was that frustration signal. That way, if anyone else is looking at this case, they know that I've already taken an action upon it. What I would typically do now is I would go through any other cases that are listed here based on what my filters are. Now, important to note that while we see that there are many here, it's more likely, based on your filters, once you have them configured, that you'll probably just see 3 or 4 cases here. So you'll just go through those, take an action if an action needs to be taken, reach out to the agent, reach out to the engineer, get an SME involved, reassign the case if applicable. whatever is needed to ensure that this case is driven towards a better outcome. As I'd mentioned, after you go through the negative sentiment signals, you're going to go to the needs attention ones. Needs attention signals are a little bit different. They're less focused on emotional state of the customer and more on procedural language. For example, here, a customer is stating that they're having a critical issue and they really need help. So in this scenario, you're going to click to open the case again. You can take a look through it. And then based on that, you can either add an internal note or you can share the case with another individual, much like you did before. You can also jump to the case directly in your CRM. Once again, the goal is simply to ensure that these cases are followed up on by members of your team and that they're being driven towards a better outcome or a faster outcome and just towards resolution before the customer gets upset or out of hand. So you'll go through each of the cases that have signals detected upon them here. And like I said, there'll probably just be 3 or 4 of them because your filter's once again set so that you only see the cases that are relevant to you. Once you've completed that, you've completed the first step of the workflows that I discussed. The next one was that you would go to the escalations board within the platform. I'm going to select here. I'm going to remove my filter just for our purposes so that you can see that there are likely to escalate cases here. These are the other critical cases that we want to make sure to take an action on and review. In your environment, with your filter set up, it's very likely that you'll see only 1 or 2 cases. Reason being is that these are distributed across members of your team, and you may not be responsible for the agents or engineers who own those cases. So it's more than likely that you will see just a couple cases here for yourself to quickly review. Much like what we did on the console page, we'll open up these cases, take a quick look at them, and you'll notice on likely to escalate cases, you have the option to start a review. You'll click Start Review here. That'll open this panel on the right-hand side, which will give you a number of insights about this case. You'll notice the case activity. For example, on this one, there's a high priority case with 3 negative signals that's been open for 24 days. These are risk factors. The next thing that you'll do then is determine, after reading through the case, does an action need to be taken by me or a member of my team? Do I need to get an SME involved? Much in the same way as we did on the other cases that we looked at. Once you determine what you want to do, you'll go ahead and acknowledge the prediction if you believe that this case is at risk and you're taking some kind of action to resolve it. You also have the option to snooze it, which will hide the case for a certain period of time, 12 hours, 1 day, or 3 days, after which it would reappear in the escalations board if SupportLogic believes it's still to be at risk. The other option is to disagree with the prediction. You don't feel that the case is at risk, so you're going to disagree with it, which will feed back into the SupportLogic machine learning and improve the model over time. So what would you do here? You can add an internal note to the case, much like I mentioned before. You can share the case with the relevant individual via Slack. You could also consider reassigning the case to a new agent. Now, in your environment, if you don't have case assignment set up, you won't necessarily see specific agent recommendations, but what you will see is the option to assign the case. So you can change the case owner. So after completing the escalation review, I acknowledge this prediction. I'll exit the review. And notice I can change the case owner directly from here just by selecting the agent that I wish to change the owner to, or I can assign it back to a queue. Once again, you may not have the recommendations set up in your environment, as that requires case assignment machine learning to be set up, but you can absolutely search for an agent to assign it to. Finally, the other option, of course, is to view the case within your own CRM directly by clicking the link here, and then you can take whatever action you need to there as opposed to doing it within SupportLogic. So the next item on the list of suggestions of how to use the SupportLogic platform efficiently and effectively is to configure relevant alerts for yourself. I'm going to navigate to the alerts section here, and I have the option to create a series of alerts. So I've started to create this one already. What I did was I selected new alert, which created an alert here. I created the name as escalation risk. And then over on the alert conditions on the right-hand side, I'm going to grab likely to escalate or escalated. And I'm going to set up this alert to notify me via Slack when this case is predicted as likely to escalate. So you'll notice you have all these options here. Uncheck there. Oh, let me uncheck there, actually. It's important. There we go. So now this case will notify me when it's predicted as likely to escalate or escalated. The key thing to remember here is I'm not responsible for all cases. So you want to once again ensure that you set up your filters accordingly by selecting the agents that report to you, or if you're responsible for enterprise support, like we discussed in the earlier filter, selecting that. And now I'll only be notified for cases that are likely to escalate or escalated that are part of the enterprise support group. Okay, so this is one key alert you should absolutely configure, and that most of our customers who are successful have configured. The next one, you should configure alert when negative sentiments are detected. So you'll notice here, I created an alert. I gave it the name negative sentiments detected. On the conditions over here on the right-hand side, you'll see that I selected all of these signals and brought them into the alert condition. I did that for all the negative sentiment ones, though most customers who use this will also do it for the needs attention signals. I then made sure to configure this for message type inbound. Reason being is that SupportLogic analyzes all signals, even on outbound messages and internal comments, and you don't want to be notified when those are detected because you're really focused on the voice of the customer and on when the customer is frustrated. Same like on the other alert, you'll want to ensure that you have it configured to only be alerted for cases that are relevant to you. So same as I did before, if I have a team created for myself, I can simply select my team, or I could do what I did with enterprise support. Okay. Finally, you should also create an alert specifically when cases are at risk of going stale. The reason this alert can be so valuable is that cases will often be at risk of going stale when you haven't followed up with a customer after they don't respond to your last message. So a very typical alert created by our customers to be successful is to trigger when the last case activity was outbound, meaning it was a message sent by your team and was a certain period of time ago. In this scenario, we did 3 days ago. The reason being that we want to follow up with this customer to ensure that if they do not need any help, we're going to close out this case. So the condition here was last case activity, which you'll see on the right-hand side over here, where I had selected outbound and I had configured the number of days. As always, you want to ensure that it's only for cases that are relevant to you. So you select your team of agents or whatever other filter is needed to ensure that you're only being alerted on relevant cases. So those are 3 alerts that I recommend that you configure. The beauty of the alerts is that you'll receive them even when you're not working out of the platform itself. That way you can go about your business and ensure that you're being efficient with your time and not spending all of your time within another platform when you're doing most of your work directly out of your CRM and other tools. Okay, so we've covered 3 of the key tasks and activities that we do in SupportLogic to be successful. Now, there are a few more. So we covered the cases on the console. We covered the cases on the escalations board. We configured our alerts. And so the last 2 things that we want to do is review backlog list views in SupportLogic, as well as review the My Agents views. So jumping back into the platform, I'm going to go over to the backlog page, and you'll notice here that there are a number of lists, typically these 4, that are configured by default. Now, while these are the default lists, you can configure your own lists, specifically based on use cases that are relevant to you. So, for example, you might want to configure a list that only shows you cases that are owned by members of your team and that are high priority, or cases that are owned by members of your team and have been inactive for a certain period of time. Typically, what our customers will do is, rather than using the default lists, even though they are valuable, they'll configure lists basically in order of how do they want to look at their cases first? Which cases do they want to tackle first? Once they've gotten through those, which cases do they want to tackle second and third, and so on? Creating a new list here is very easy. You'll go ahead and hit Create New List. You'll enter a new list name. So let's say for our purposes, I'm going to do high priority cases. Or actually, let's do critical or high severity cases. I'm going to hit Next. I'm going to go to case severity here. I'm going to select critical and high. I'll hit Next again. And then I'll choose a sorting mechanism. I like last outbound message because it'll sort cases by when a member of my team last sent a message to them. I'll hit Create. And now we can actually see this first list only contains critical and high severity cases. And you'll notice the sorting mechanism, which shows when the last message was sent to them. Right now, this is sorted in ascending order, but I'll go ahead and switch that sort direction. That way, I'm seeing the cases sorted by the one that had a message sent out to it the longest time ago. We can see that for this list, 14 hours is the longest one. But when you set up a list like this, it could very well be that you see that a case hasn't been followed up with for 3 days or 6 days or 7 days. The point is that you configure a list that allows you to tackle cases in such a way where you're getting to the most important ones first and ensuring that they're being driven towards resolution. You can create as many lists as you want, but I really recommend you just create no more than 3 or 4 specific to use cases that are relevant to you. Any list can actually be deleted just by clicking the 3 dots there and selecting Delete List. All right. So with these backlog list views, we always recommend that you do the other activities first, the console and the escalations board, and then you come to this afterwards and go through it as you have time. Maybe you don't do it all in one sitting, but you try to work through the cases that are highlighted here to ensure that you're driving those cases towards a better outcome. Lastly, we're going to go to the My Agents view. The My Agents view is valuable because you can look at your individual team members' backlog grouped by status, as well as by case age, case priority, case inactivity, or last outbound comment. So you can select any of these, but the beauty of this really is that it allows you to spot cases that maybe are in statuses that they shouldn't be in at that age, or cases that have been inactive for a period of time, or that you want to ensure don't go stale. Many of our customers use this in one-on-ones with their team members, right? So a manager who meets with their team will look at this heat map and quickly be able to work with that team member and tell them which cases they should try and get to that week or that day. They can also just use it to spot check. And then after doing that, send a nudge or a Slack message to that member of their team, telling them to take a look at a certain case. You can click any of the boxes to quickly open up the relevant case. And if you see that there's a problem, you can go ahead and share that case, once again, via Slack or your messaging channel. You can open it directly within your CRM. You can add an internal case note, as well as reassign the case if need be. Perhaps that team member is just a little too busy to handle this case with the rest of their backlog. Okay. So to regroup here, we covered a number of key things. Simple steps that you can follow to be efficient and effective with SupportLogic. To quickly recap, we configured our filters. We know to review the cases on the console that contain needs attention and negative signals. We know to review cases on the escalations board that are predicted as likely to escalate and perform any escalation reviews there. We also configured our alerts so that we can stay up to date throughout the day without spending too much time in SupportLogic. We reviewed how to create backlog lists for relevant use cases to ensure that important cases are progressing appropriately. And finally, we learned how to review the My Agents views to quickly spot cases owned by team members that may be going stale and need follow-up, or may be at risk in some other way. Typical time commitment for performing these tasks is no more than an hour a day. But like I said, as you become more efficient, it could take you 30 minutes, right? The key is that you go through the cases that are presented there and then move on throughout your day, being as efficient as possible. And then you can just leverage the alerts to drive you back into the platform as needed if you want to deep dive further into a case. All right. Well, thanks for your time today, and happy supporting.